Good evening on this Wednesday, June 4th. It's beautiful outside, but I'm still going to be here to have our credit conversation. I know a lot of you guys are probably out enjoying that 80 plus weather. I'm going to get out in it as soon as we get done with this webinar. I'm going to run out and get into it myself, but I like to stay on task and honor that. So of course, this is Credit Conversations, and I'm the only one on, so I guess it won't be much of a conversation, but I got some good, juicy items for you guys to take a bite into as you work on your credit and as you're on your credit journey. Okay, so today I'm going to get right to it. I was waiting a little bit to see if anyone jumped on, but that's okay. So I guess I'm going to go through one of my lessons prepared. This one deals with handling common responses from credit bureaus, collection agencies, and creditors. So when you're disputing items on your credit report and you're contacting the creditors, the collection agencies, you may get responses back. I often do as I'm helping people with credit. And a big key in success here is knowing how to interpret the responses. Basically, what are they saying in regards to the letter that we sent out? We said something on credit. We said it shouldn't be this, it should not be that. It's too old, it shouldn't be there. It's inaccurate. Here's the corrections. We paid this. Here's our proof. All of those things. And so how you interpret their response is going to dictate your next step. And you want to make sure that the next step you take is essential in getting success at repairing your credit. Now, this lesson is a detailed guide on the typical responses that you might receive, what they mean, and what I recommend as a next action. And I'm going to throw in a couple of pro tips that I use to improve the chances of a favorable outcome. But before I do that, let me just talk about this. The dispute process is a lot like tennis. It's some back and forth. You see your credit, you see what's there, you respond to what's there, they respond to your letter, whether it's a request for action, a request for information, such as validation, verification, things like that. And with the lobbing back and forth, it's a time frame in between. It's going over in 30-day cycles, 30 to 45-day cycles. So keep in mind, in the credit repair process, it's time. It's not instantaneous. Some things take longer than others. Some things happen quicker than others. But there's a time frame with just about every piece of the credit repair process. And how much time is taken depends partly on how well you make the request in the first place, word it right, backup, documentation, so on and so forth. And then what's the level of cooperation we're getting from the various credit bureaus, credit collection agencies, and creditors. So keep that in mind and have that patience, but more importantly, have that perseverance so that you don't give up the fight too soon. So, because I can tell you a story, a scenario. These are two people very similar. I had one individual, and she had a situation where it was a collection charge-off that it was a collection that she had paid after it was in collections. She had made a negotiated settlement, and so she paid a reduced amount. The credit report was still reflecting the item as a collection, and it noted that she had paid less than the full amount. And so I said to her, give me all your documentation, give me a copy of the letter that you received from them when they offered and you accepted the negotiated settlement and the verbiage that said this is what the amount we needed to do that. She didn't have any of that. It had happened, in her words, a long time ago. She didn't keep that stuff. She had moved several times. She had no idea. So I said, would you be willing to, it'd be in your best interest if you reached out to the credit bureau, to the creditor, the collection agency, and get that documentation, because they keep everything on record. We all know everything's on record now, and have them resend you that negotiated statement, all the document paperwork that they had sent you previously. Tell them you need another copy because you lost yours and you're trying to get some issues on credit. And I left it at that. Several weeks later, I followed up with her several times, and after several weeks, I said, did you get anything back? Did you get anything? So she said, well, you know what? I'm just going to keep it real with you. I never even bothered calling because I just ain't had time. It's been busy at work, so on and so forth. I understand. Life be life. But this was something, if you wanted to get this thing accomplished, you needed to take a step back and just make the phone call, or the email. That way, and then you can go back to life as life and while you're waiting for them to fulfill your request. And so after nearly 2 months of that, in the meantime, waiting for that, once I realized she had kind of dragged her feet, I proceeded to try to battle this item without that documentation. Now, of course, they said we have no record. They said we checked with them. They said everything is right and everything, because I didn't have anything to fight with. I just kept saying, check, check, check. And they kept saying, we did. And then in a different situation, I had a young lady, same thing. Same thing. She had a collection / charge off. She had paid it. She had settled it for less than full amount, but she kept all her paperwork. She had her documentation. So when she said, I don't know why this is not on my credit, I said, send me the documentation. She did. She forwarded me a copy. I sent that along with a letter to the credit bureaus and to the creditors saying, this should not be on here. This is paid. This is no longer a collection. This should not be derogatory. With that paperwork, took off everything. The next step they did was they took off everything except the comments about the debt being paid for less than full amount. But they updated everything else. Her score rose some 30-something points just from that on each of the 3 bureaus. And then I went back and I said, hey, why did you leave this on here? And they kind of argued that, yes, but that is correct because she didn't pay the full amount. I said, okay, but she paid the amount that you guys accepted. Why are you objective removing it now? Are you still having an issue with her remaining balance being wiped away by you guys or what? They're like, well, I said, so are you saying she still owes the money? And no. And they said, well, no, we agreed to this. I'm like, okay, but then it shouldn't be on credit. And although it took a little bit of time, but we went from 60 days with it completely removed. Everything was gone. Her credit score went up 70, almost 70 points, 60 some points. And this person going 60 days and still not getting everything simply because she had documentation, she did not. So that's important. I just wanted to bring that up. So let's jump into these common responses. And I'm going to start by talking about the common responses from the credit bureaus, because most of we get those first. We get those. And here's some recommendations on how to respond to those responses. The first one, most common response, generally speaking, they come back and they say, you had an inquiry, you're asking about some account that you think is wrong. The first approach is to have them to validate and verify it. So then they come back and they say, verified as accurate. So basically what that means is the credit bureau supposedly investigated the claims that the information was and that the information is correct, and they don't feel a need to change anything. Now, of course, we all know, you saw my video earlier this year with 2 of the 3 credit bureaus, and the third one was in the crosshairs of the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, where they were suing them because they said they were not actually doing these investigations. They were merely reaching out to the creditor and say, hey, you guys say this is wrong. Consumer says it's right. You said it's right. What you got on credit, consumer says it's wrong. Is it right? And they say, yeah, it's right. They said, oh, okay. They didn't ask for them to document anything. They just took them at their word. So these were considered sham investigations, and TransUnion and Experian were being sued. I'm sorry, Experian and Equifax were being sued, and TransUnion was on deck. Now, those lawsuits have been stalled out through the actions taken against the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau by the Trump administration. So if you do receive that, so assuming they did that, so regardless of, with that being said, I should say, the meaning of them saying we investigated and claims the information is correct, we don't see a need to change it. So your next step is going to be to send a method of verification letter. So first we sent the validation verification letter. Now we send a method of verification. So which is exactly like it sounds. Well, we want to request the details from the Bureau to verify how exactly did they investigate and verify that that information was correct, because we are certain that it is not. And so when you do that, what you ask for specific information, such as the name of the person at the agency who verified the information, the name of the person who they talked to at the creditor who said the information was such, and the method they used. Did they just go by, did they do a computer search, a file search, things of that nature? And so with that being said, you want to send a section, an FCRA section 611 dispute letter. This is a very specific type of dispute letter, not the general generic ones that you'll see in templates and things like that. And with them, you want to emphasize that your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act for further investigation if you believe that the investigation that they did was inadequate. So again, it's that part of that back and forth. So if they come back and say they did an investigation, you would say, how was it done? And I don't believe, and prove it to me. Now, here's an additional pro tip that I recommend. You should attach additional documentation, if you have any, remember my examples, to support your dispute. Things like, like you got any kind of payment records or contracts or any other records. And if you don't, from this point on, make sure you keep a copy of everything that you have. So you got backups and you got evidence. That goes a long way in how fast and how successful your credit repair process goes. Now, another update response is the account was actually updated or corrected. So they came back, you disputed it, you said this is wrong. They came back and they actually did do something. So it came back, the account came back as on the next credit report as updated or converted. So what does that mean? The Bureau took your request. They made a change to the information on the credit report based on your dispute. So you sent the letter, you had documentation, hopefully, and they made a change. So what's your next action? You should review your updated credit report that comes along after that update was made. Confirm that the changes that they made align with your request. So if you ask for them, you said the balance was incorrect, you only owe $12 or instead of $120, that they updated it and it actually says $12, because they'll send you a letter saying they made updates. You want to check the next available credit report when it's been refreshed to make sure that what they said they changed, number one, is that is in fact what happened on the credit report. And number two, is that what you were after? You said you wanted 12 and it should be 120. Now they could have said we made a change, but they said it was 121 or they went higher or something like that. So make sure that their letter, their response is consistent with what you asked for, and make sure that the actual changes they make are consistent with what they say, with what you asked for, as well as what they granted. After that, you should send a confirmation request. I always, asking for written confirmation, that the item has been corrected if it's a major negative item like a delinquency or late payment or something like that, if it was an error. So if they told you you were late and you weren't, and then you proved that it wasn't late, they should update it accordingly. Okay. Now, a pro tip for this one, I recommend that you keep copies of all your updated records. I know I sound like a broken record. Keep documentation. Got to have a paper trail. And that paper trail will also obviously serve as proof in case the item that you got taken off your credit pops up again later. That does happen. And so that's important. Okay, now the next response they say the item was deleted. The account was deleted. Basically, what does this mean? The Bureau removed the dispute from your credit report in its entirety. The disputed item in its entirety. They wiped it off. They didn't do any changes. It's totally gone. So what's your next action with that? You want to monitor your credit report routinely, either through one of the free ones, the paid ones, annualcreditreport.com. They were providing more recent, weekly and more frequent ones, but I think they're back to the annual only now, once a year. So however you monitor your credit, make sure you monitor for those removed items to make sure that they don't pop back up and reappear later, because they can and often do. And so if it does, you may need to send a reinsertion letter. And that'll keep your credit together. Again, fixing your credit is that process. You start to go from where you are and remove negative stuff there, but you still always want to monitor and maintain your credit going forward. This is not a one-shot deal, people. This is managing your credit is just like managing your finances and your money. If you don't take care of it, you're gonna lose it. You're gonna be broke, and what we call broken credit is low credit score. So it's important that you stay vigilant and stay diligent in your credit report, your credit monitoring and maintenance efforts. So, hold on one second. My computer is telling me it's low on power, so I'm just plugging in my power. There we go. Okay, now next. Oh, also, I recommend that you send them a thank you letter. I know it's optional, and I know some people think it's a little cheesy, a little fuzzy, but just to be a little bit professional, and you let them know that you're following up and you are creating that you're serious about your efforts. Now, here's a pro tip on that one. I recommend that you use credit monitoring, a quality one, that all three bureaus, because you need to monitor all three credit bureaus. Technically 4, but at least TransUnion, Experian, Equifax. It's also a good idea to monitor your CBC Innovis, which is what we consider like the 4th bureau as well, to make sure that information all stays correct and currently on an ongoing basis. And then that way you can always spot when something's wrong, it's something that shouldn't be there, take effort to remove it. and keep your credit tight and keep your credit high. Now, the next one is when they tell you that you provided insufficient information for them to process your dispute. Now, I generally think of this sometimes if I've sent information along with my request and I get this response, which is rare, but it does happen, I know this is a stall tactic of theirs. Now, if you're sending a dispute with no documentation and you get this response, you can assume, you can presume and accuse them of being it being a stall tactic. But when you're not sending anything, it's highly possible that you don't have enough information for them to go forward. So, but the true meaning is the bureaus needs more information from you to proceed. That's what the premise is. Whether that's true or not, again, that's in the eye of the beholder. But the ball is in their court, so we got to follow along. So we have to take them at their word. So with that being said, what's our next action? You want to rescind the dispute with more documentation. So if you send the dispute with none, anything other than that is more, but more is better if it's relevant to, it supports your position that this needs to be removed or modified in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And so you include any additional documentation. You want to, like, account numbers, anything else, paperwork, receipts, anything like that, any payment records, any other documentation that will support your case. Then you also want to highlight key details in your dispute. You know, in that follow-up, you want to be clear about the exact errors and issues that you're disputing. And you want to specify exactly what you want them to do. Don't just say it's wrong. You say it's wrong and I want it removed. It's wrong, I want to update to the following. If you think it should be something else, tell them what it should be. Don't just say, this is wrong and I want y'all to look at it. You say, nope, I don't owe a balance. This is not mine. Remove it. I don't owe a balance because I never had an outstanding balance. I was never late. And here's my documentation. So take off these lates, take off of this, anything related to a derogatory negative, because this account was always in good standing. Any of that stuff, you got documentation that supports it, you send that. You will get better results faster when you send that. So I'm going to offer you another pro tip. Use certified mail when you're doing your submissions. Yes, it costs a little bit more if you're mailing your own. And you're doing that, yes, it costs a little bit more, but it's important to send those. I don't think you should send certified mail. It's been my experience. If you try to send certified mail to the credit bureaus, it's going to get kicked back. But if you're sending something to the creditors, by all means, certified mail, somebody has to sign for it. So don't be, I know you see people out there that say send everything certified mail to make sure, but I think it's been my opinion that sending certified mail to credit bureaus is a waste of time. You just end up getting it back returned to sender because their P.O. box system is not made for certified mail. Here's another one. You may have gotten a response. You sent something, you say, this is BS. I don't know what this is, but I'm concerned. Or you try to send multiple. I mean, you can usually send a few, but you got to be careful on how many items you dispute with the credit bureaus at the same time in one letter. And here's why. You would oftentimes get a response that says frivolous or irrelevant dispute. What does that mean? From their perspective, it means that the credit bureaus consider your dispute as either being repetitive because you've disputed it before or lacking any sufficient grounds. You're asking them to do something that's not justified. For example, you have a repossession and you're asking them to remove it because you don't remember it. Or you say the car got sold and you shouldn't have to pay anything. And then they say that's irrelevant because if there was an outstanding balance that was unsatisfied through the proceeds of sale, you're still responsible for it, something along those lines. So if you get that, what do you do next? So next action, you want to send what we call a reinforcement letter. That is where we politely but firmly state that our dispute is valid and emphasize that your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act allow you to dispute inaccurate information. And then you want to clarify any misunderstandings. So if you got that paperwork, you send it. You be clear. If your dispute was too general or too vague, make it more clear so they know exactly what you're asking about. And you want to make sure that you typically, only want to dispute 5 or less items on your credit report at one time in one letter. So you could send multiple letters with multiple items, but you don't want to have more than 5 in one letter. Now, here's a pro tip that I use. You can send the letters if you're sending multiple letters where you got 10 items to dispute, you got 5 in one letter and 5 in the other. I recommend you don't have it too short of a time and don't have too many on one letter, because that often triggers that frivolous label. So if you got 5 items you're disputing and you send a letter with 5, I recommend you wait at least 3 weeks before you send the next letter with the additional 5. And that way that one gets processed out, and then before the other one gets entered in, and there's not this overlap that triggers the frivolous flag in their algorithm. So those are the ones for the creditors. So now I'm going to talk about the common responses from collection agencies and how to respond to them, because we know these guys can be a son of a gun and be real difficult when it comes to trying to dispute third-party collection accounts. So you get the response from them about debt validated. What this means is they're claiming that the collection agency, that they have provided verification and evidence that the debt is legitimate. Okay. So you say, we know you think that because you wouldn't be having on credit if they didn't believe otherwise, or they wouldn't be sending you letters if they didn't believe otherwise. Obviously, we know that they believe that, but they claiming that they provided verification and evidence. Problem is, what they sent you, even though they say it's evidence, it may not necessarily be actual evidence. So the next action you want to take is you want to review the so-called validation documentation that they sent you. You want to check for inconsistencies or any inaccuracies in the validation. So they send you this validation saying, here's our proof that you owe this money based on this. Well, make sure it's you and not another, Sally Clark. You might be Sally M. Clark. They sent you verification on Sally N. Clark. So make sure that that's correct. Make sure, and if you see any inconsistencies and errors there, then you continue to dispute, because you say, no, what you sent me ain't me. That's not me. This is not my birthday. My middle initial is M, not N. I never had this, so on and so forth. So you can continue that. Now, you also want, if they do validate it and everything is above board and it turns out it really is yours, then you want to consider paying that to delete it off your credit report. But again, we only pay collections when they've been validated and verified, when we don't have any other legal recourse, they're not expired, or any of the other provisions under the Fair Credit Reporting Act that we could try removing the debt from credit. Now, keep in mind that removing items from credit does not other than paying it, removing items through statutes or expirations or any of that stuff doesn't mean that you don't owe the debt. It just means that we got it off credit, which is our priority. But of course, by paying a debt, you're going to take care of the debt and the credit at the same time. But I say that to say, when you're negotiation for a pay to delete situation, you want to make sure that the debt is valid, is really yours. And so then if you're willing and able to pay it, you want to negotiate either in full or at a discount. Oftentimes they're willing to take a discount to resolve the issue. But just keep in mind, if you ever negotiate to pay off a debt at a discount, you want to make sure that with third-party collection agencies, despite not paying the balance in full, they will still allow it to be removed from your credit. Because at the end of the day, if you end up paying a third-party collection and it's still on your credit, you haven't accomplished what you set out to do, which was to help clean up your credit and improve your credit file and get higher scores. So when negotiating for those discount settlements, make sure it's clear that you still expect them to take it off your credit. And if they say they won't take it off unless you pay it in full, you can consider that. But typically, just be clear, don't assume because they're offering you a discount that they're going to take it off. They may just update it. With third-party collections, we prefer they take it off altogether, and that the original account is listed as closed and in favorable standing. So here's a pro tip on this one. You want to ensure that any and all payment agreements are in writing, and you do that before you make any payments. Because there are some out there that will verbally agree to any and everything on the phone. You send them the money and they go, oh, we don't have record of that. Oh, we don't do that. So make sure you get any agreements in writing before you pay them any money. And if they say upon receipt of payment for this amount, we allow it to be approved from credit, that's something you want to have in the letter that will ensure that if they don't remove it, you have the right documentation, which is important, to send to the credit bureau saying, I got a letter right here that they told me upon payment of receipt of payment that they will allow this to be removed from credit. They didn't remove it, but I got my copy and here's my proof of payment. And so the credit bureau says, yeah, you're right. They said it would be okay to remove it. And so they would confirm that to say, is this letter true? They say, yeah. And then you get it removed from your credit. And I can tell you the difference in improvement to your credit score when a third-party collection is removed entirely from your report versus just being updated to paid is huge. Removing it completely could be 60, 70, 80 points or more, depending on other situations, whereas just getting it updated to paid and zero balance might be 15 points. So it's much cleaner, much better, and much more profitable for you as a credit person trying to fix their credit. Try to get it removed versus updated. Okay. Now, here's another response that you often see from the collection agencies. We don't have your ID or this is insufficient information. So basically, the agency is asking for more details to process your dispute. So what's your next action? You want to provide additional documentation, such as the ID that they asked for. So you give them a copy of your ID. You can give them proof of address and any other necessary documentation. Proof of address is usually in the form of a utility bill that has your current name and address as well as the utilities name on it. They want to see that letterhead and make sure it's an official utility document. Could be insurance card, your auto insurance, could even be a bank statement, but I would recommend if you use a bank statement, you black out all your account information because that ain't none of their business. But it will serve you for the address verification, because these are documents they assume that you wouldn't have going anywhere else but your house. And then you could also go a step further and send a certified follow-up after you've provided that information, through certified mail, like I mentioned before. It's always good. That way they can't say they never got it, because they got to sign for it. And, that'll avoid delays by them coming back and saying, we never received it. You follow up and they said, we never got it, so on and so forth. Now, here's one of the good responses you might get. The debt will be removed. You're like, cool. All right, finally, we're getting somewhere. So at that point, the collection agency agrees to remove the debt from your credit report. So you got something in writing that says we do it. Now you got to get your credit report. Obviously, next action is you want to if they told you that over the phone verbally, you say you want that in writing. If they sent you a letter saying we're going to remove it, you keep that for your records. And then what you want to do, so then you want to ensure you got that written documentation. Then you want to check your credit report in 30 to 45 days to see if it's updated and that item has been removed. Sometimes they go faster, but of course we know with credit cycles, that's how it can go. Now, if your credit monitoring service will charge you for a fee to give you an updated credit report right then and there, you can most certainly do that. Some of them, it's a built-in feature. Others, you just got to wait every 30 days for the credit reporting cycle to kick in. No matter what the case, you want to watch out and make sure if they said they removed the debt, that it did in fact improve your credit and hopefully improve your score. So, settlement offers. Let's talk a little bit, because we talked a little bit about those before, but let's talk a little bit about those. So you responded, you reached out, and you asked for validation verification. They provided that. And then you asked for assistance in resolving this issue. They make a settlement offer to you. So the meaning is obvious. They plan on offering you a reduced payment to settle the debt. That's not uncommon, because most third-party collection agencies bought the debt at a discount anyway. Say they bought it for pennies, and if they can get half or so of the money back that you originally owed, they're happy with that, because they'll still make a profit. So it's very good to try to negotiate. You want to negotiate for a pay to delete situation, because again, we want it removed rather than updated when they're third-party collections. You want to ask them if they are willing to delete the debt from your report as part of the settlement, like I mentioned before. So you want to make sure that's in the conversation, whether they expect you to pay in full or partial. You want to make sure that the fact that it's going to be removed from your credit stays in the conversation, because that's your goal. You're trying to maximize, clean up your credit. The more you clean off, the better your score is going to be in the long run, because your file will be cleaner. So people ask me all the time, should I take the discount, or should I? If they won't let me remove this from my credit, should I pay the whole thing? I say, well, it depends on how bad you want. If you want your credit report improved, you want to get as much negative information off as possible. And if the only way you can get them to remove it is by paying the whole thing, that is a consideration. But just remember, if you stick with the negotiated settlement and they don't want to remove it, that's consequence of not doing that. So you got to kind of weigh that closely. I can't tell you whether it's the right or wrong answer, but if your goal is maximum credit, obviously you want to do the thing that will get you maximum credit. Again, make sure you get it in writing. And if you do get something in writing, avoid signing any agreement without reading them closely. Make sure you read over the fine details, and make sure that they could have stuff in there that have statute of limitations, or is only good for a limited time, those type of things. Or they may it may end up resetting your credit or something like that. So just make sure you read the agreement closely and make sure it makes sense, and make sure it's doing and not doing, it doesn't do anything that you don't want it to do, and that is doing what you're achieving your goal. So next one, you get a message that says account is closed or the account cannot be reopened. So you get this one. What does that one mean? If the creditor indicates that the account is closed and it says closed on the credit, they'll tell you they cannot make any adjustments. But I'm not entirely sure if that's true. Some claim, some hold steadfast and say they can. Others claim it and then they turn around and make changes later anyway. So I don't know if they're bluffing. So what's your next action in that case? We want to send a goodwill adjustment letter or request letter. And again, the system, there's, my new DIY platform will help you with that. You want to politely request a removal of any negative marks due to certain special circumstances. And then you explain that any changes in your financial stability or other factors that caused the account to be closed, that led to the default. You got laid off, you were in a bad car accident, medical issue that's non-accident, like medical condition, things like that. Now, what I often do as a pro tip is I try to, if your issue is only with that specific creditor and that you don't have issues and you're in good standing with other accounts on your credit report, I always recommend, and this seems kind of weird, you point out to them through evidence, you say, hey, I know I had the problem with y'all, but look, I'm doing good. I'm good. Look at my other accounts. Look at these other accounts. I held these together. Unfortunately, yours was the one that fell through the cracks and I was not able to do it. But I just want to let you know that I'm not a total deadbeat. Me and you got off on a bad track, but I do know how to handle my debts by showing in those other accounts that are in good standing. And that can demonstrate financial responsibility in that regard. It doesn't always work. Sometimes they don't care, but it doesn't hurt to try that. Now, another response that you often get is no response, and especially on disputes and inquiries, where you say, hey, I sent something out. It's been 60 days. I never got anything back from them. No response at all. And then I'm like, okay, they're breaking the law, because the law says they have to respond to you within 30 to 45 days of when they received your request, your letter, right? So obviously, next thing you want to do, your first action is send a follow-up dispute, where it's not the same letter again. It's a letter with language that's a little bit more aggressive, where you reference the original dispute letter, and then you highlight to them that, hey, I know but I'm going to let you know I know that the Fair Credit Reporting Act says you are legally required to give me a response to my request. Now, this is my second time asking, and I'm going to let you know that I have an option. Now, I can, and here's your option. You could either send another follow-up or wait for that follow-up response, or you could file a complaint with the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau on their website and easily file that. But there's a lot of gurus out there that are telling people to file complaints with the CFPB, and then it tells you when was your original request. They're telling people to not do the dispute, just go right to the CFPB, and you don't have to do the dispute. But the CFPB expects you to do your first and your second dispute requests before coming to them. And the only way they will do anything for you is when you indicate that you did. And then you got to prove that. So if you didn't do that first, you got to lie about it. And then you're going to have to make up documentation to prove it, because that's what a lot of these gurus are doing. Some of them, they're telling people to do fraudulent things. They say, okay, they're telling you to do something, and then they're telling you to how to get around the barrier, the rule that's in place by basically lying. So just remember, you got to send a dispute, and then possibly a second dispute. Then you file a complaint because they haven't responded to your request. Now, if they come back and say, we sent it out and they sent it to the wrong address, that usually means you missed a step previously to disputing, because there is a step where I tell you, clean up all your personal information, your names, your addresses, so that they got the most recent address. You also want to follow up with your creditors before you start all this process to make sure they all have your current address. A lot of people don't like doing that because they don't want the creditors to know where they are, because they don't want to pay them. But you cannot resolve your issues hiding under rocks. So you want to do that. That way, the lines of communication start in both directions, flow freely, and that increases your chance of getting your credit fixed tenfold, just by getting the right lines of communications in place and then following the steps. And so, as a pro tip, I recommend that you keep a log of all your communications when you're reaching out to the creditor. So when you call them in correct addresses, correct phone information, correct email addresses, you log that and say who you talk to. And then that way, later on, if it's ever a court issue and then the court or CFPB even ask them, why didn't they reach out to you with the information you asked for, and they say, well, this is the one number we had on file, and you say, no, I updated that information 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago. I spoke to Beverly and advisor of that. But again, if you get that follow-up documentation afterwards, because after you make that kind of request, you should ask for something in writing saying you received my request and you updated my file accordingly. So you always want to get that feedback, get that documentation, and keep that paper trail. So you can prove just about anything you claim, and you will almost always get what you want corrected, removed, eliminated when you follow the process, and you give yourself some backup. Now, working on your credit yourself is great. It's fantastic. It's awesome. But you want to make sure that you maximize your efforts and that you increase your chances for success, and with the least amount of effort. But of course, understand that it is work. So, but I believe, and as I tell my clients often, I do things a certain way for efficiency's sake, because sometimes if you wait 2 weeks to get a piece of paper before you send in that request, you might think you're losing 2 weeks of time instead of just sending off your request right away. But by waiting for that document, if I send it off without the document, they're going to respond in 45 days and say, we need more information. Well, if I wait 2 weeks, get the documentation first, then send it, I'll wait 30, 45 days to get a positive response. So the extra 2 weeks still beats that. And especially when you got documentation, you typically don't have to wait the full 30, 45 days, because they will take action right away when given the proper documentation to support your position. At that point, it's only the amount of time it takes for them to reach out to the creditor to confirm or deny what you just proved. Sorry, I gotta take a swig. So, some more pro tips and strategies for maximizing your result. These are things I do. These are things I recommend you do. Use certified mail. Like I said, more so with the creditors and the collection agencies, not so much with the credit bureaus. Okay, because with that certified mail, it'll give you a return receipt, and that's further proof that your letters were received which might be crucial down the line if you have to escalate and or file a complaint. Because if you file a complaint with the CFPB, you got all that documentation. They will investigate all complaints, but they can investigate it with a little bit more vigor when they got documentation in hand. Because again, nobody wants to go into a fight unarmed, and documentation arms you for this battle, this dispute. And the better your weapons, the better your tools, the better chance you get to win in the fight. So, along with that, maintain detailed records. Keep copies of all communications, all letters and disputes, and the responses, because all of this documentation will help you if you need to refer back to anything, any previous steps each time you need to escalate. Because again, like I said, credit repairs the process. Sometimes it's a back and forth, and each time you go back, you want to make sure you got one more piece of paper, one or more pieces of paper to help you with the next step. That way you're not just spinning your wheels doing the same thing over and over again. You want to follow up every 30 days. Again, part of the process. You want to check the status of all your disputes at least every 30 days after you submit them to them. Now, if you check your credit on something you disputed, there's no change and no update, then you got to follow up directly with that creditor, or to say, hey, I resent something, nothing's been updated, what's going on? I spend a lot of time doing that behind the scenes, going back and forth because of lack of movement from them. And again, I spoke on this earlier about frivolous disputes. You want to avoid repetitive disputes. Having multiple disputes for the same item, especially within a short period of time, can lead to that frivolous lawsuit label that I mentioned earlier. You want to ensure that all your disputes have new information or new documentation. So it's okay if you disputed something in the past and now you're disputing again if you got new information that you didn't have before, because it's almost like a de facto escalation. Because if you dispute the same thing, you say, okay, I'm back, I'm still talking about this, but now I got documentation, I got proof, I got other things. And so that's the only time you're okay with doing that. The next one is consult professional help if you need it. Now, again, I've told you guys about the DIY platform I'm rolling out. I was going to mention that later. I am rolling that out. I'm offering the first 100 people who DM me through whatever social media they're seeing the video on, DM me, and I will make a spot for you to get access to my free AI algorithm-driven software platform, which will help you fix your credit by yourself, and it's free. There's no monthly cost involved with it, no monthly cost to be in it. You just have to have your credit monitoring and download your credit report in there, and you can fix your credit for free. This algorithm will help you through the process. It'll tell you what to do in each round, and you tell them what is your reason for the dispute. You pick from the descriptions there, and it writes you a letter custom for your situation, not a template, even though there are templates in the library, but the AI is what's writing your letter based on your situation and what you say is your reason for dispute. It's awesome. It takes you through the process. It keeps track of all these things. I talked a lot about tracking and paperwork. The beauty of this system is it does all of that for you. I still recommend you having that paper trail, a manila folder with physical paper. But it's also good to have a digital there too within the system. So I wanted to mention that. But again, that's an adjunct to what I was going to say about consulting professional help, because if this is great, and you can probably take care of most of the simplest things, even though there's some back and forth, but the concepts and the reasoning for the disputes are fairly simple. These are not complicated things. Even if you did 90% of that, your credit bill fixing yourself, and you only got one or two difficult things that you could not do yourself, you could still save a lot of money, because if you hire me or someone like me just to fix one or two things, you're certainly going to pay a lot less money than you would if you wanted us to fix your entire credit report in months on end. So even if you end up hiring someone for some of the stubborn items, you still save a lot of money by doing it yourself, especially through my platform, DIY Credit Builder by Credit Renovators. And so you can definitely save money that way. But I think your savings is going to be when your credit's better and your financing is cheaper, you have access, things like that, the difference in your rates and the difference in payments, that's where your real money is. It's not so much in how much you save by not hiring somebody, not how much money you save if they're able to, by trying to get disputes, collections and things off. You save tons more money down the line than what you would save. Obviously, that different with things like $20,000 repossessions or something like that. And you want to use the goodwill strategy wisely. What is the goodwill strategy? Those goodwill letters are the ones we send, like, say you've had a perfect pay history on your car. You've been paying on time, no problems for 30 months. Month 31, you forgot, your auto pay got turned off, you had a layoff, or something happened in your family, and you just forgot to pay your note. So next month, you find out you got a 30-day late. And so then you reach out to them, you make the payment, you pay the late fee and all of that first. Then you go back and you ask them, you says, hey, I got this 30-day late on my credit. As you can look at my record and say, I've been in good standing with you guys for years. I am a valued customer. As a goodwill courtesy, could you remove that 130-day late? I know it's a one-time thing, but if you could remove that, that way it won't impact my credit. Now, if they value as a customer and you've been good all along, typically they will remove a single 30-day late. And I find more times than not, if you're in good standing with them, you always were with them, as well as your other creditors, they have no problem taking away a 30-day late. Now, they're not going to do it often, but if you haven't had any issues in 30 months, nearly 3 years, they will most likely take care of you, because even though this loan might be coming to a close, they want you to come back for another one. And so they want to provide that good customer service, obviously for retention purposes. So again, you want to make sure that you track your on-time payments, and so you can have a good case to present. And last but not least, you want to verify the statutes of limitations. And I'm going to talk about this in an upcoming video that'll be available. You want to make sure that you know the statute of limitations on each of your debt. And I'm going to talk about the debt clock, because there's a lot of vagary about that, because typically most debt is time barred. So you don't want to go out and pay a collection if it's close to being mandatorily removed from your account due to statute of limitations. So part of your credit review process in the beginning is those collections you want to pay attention to when the late started. The confusion lies is with third-party collections. You hear people talk about, the 7-year clock. But the problem with that is, yes, there is a 7-year clock, but that 7-year clock is not connected to the third-party collection. It's connected to the original debt that the collection agency bought it from. So some of those are 7 years plus 180 days from delinquency, but it's based on, remember, with third-party collections, it's not based on any information from them. It's based on information from the original creditor that they have. And then there's different expirations for different types of debt. In other words, you got, because some debt is tied to the original creditor when you went 180 days late, then they go 7 years after that. Some of them, they don't go by that date, they go by the last date of activity, things like that. I'm going to go over that in another report because I don't want to go into the whole debt clock thing. I want to try to keep these videos, I try to keep them within that hour unless we got questions. And since we don't have questions tonight, I'm not going to go on with a whole new topic. I'm going to talk about that in my video about the debt clock. So in summary, to achieve the maximum success in the credit repair process, it is important that you respond appropriately to the credit bureaus, the collection agencies, and the creditors during the process. And that's going to dictate a lot about your success. Understanding the common responses that I talked about here today and knowing the best strategies to address each one will help you correct errors, remove negative items, and ultimately improve your credit score. By following these steps and applying the pro tips that I talked about, you'll maximize your choices and your chances of favorable outcome and keep your credit report accurate and favorable. That's how you get to and stay in the 700s. But it takes patience, perseverance, and diligence on these. So obviously there's no one on, so there's no questions. So I'm going to leave it there. But again, I want to invite you one more time when you see this replay that if you DM me, letting me know you're interested in getting the free credit repair, access to the free credit repair software platform, I want to get you registered on that. And like I said, I'm definitely the first 100 people will get access without any pre-purchase of any kind. Now, the platform doesn't require any monthly fees at all, but in the future, you may have to buy one of my other products to get access to the platform for free. And so, and part of the community, and then I'm going to create an additional community, hopefully, and it will be for all the people that's in the platform. We can all help each other with credit issues. So again, I invite you, if you want one of the 100 spots, and I'm going to try to do that in the next 24 to 48 hours. If I fill up the 100 spots sooner than that, then still DM me anyway, and I still may make room. I might make room for an additional 10 or 20 people on top of the 100. But you got to DM me